Did you feel the earthquake we had last Wednesday? Yes? I was sitting in my dining room on the second story of our home when I heard the windows shake and could feel the floor moving beneath my feet. My head spiraled. My temperature rose and my stomach tightened because that wasn't the first time that I'd ever felt the earth shake beneath my feet and felt completely helpless. A month or so ago, I was at home when I heard this deafening cracking noise. I made it outside just in time to see this enormous tree, nearly 4 stories tall, falling in the direction of my mother's home on our property. And I remember I felt the air involuntarily just pushed out of my lungs as the tree slammed into the ground, shaking the earth beneath my feet, barely missing her roof by only a few inches. It landed on exactly the spot where the two of us were headed. So it could have killed us, and if it had hit the house, it would have completely destroyed it. So last week, when I felt the house trembling, I was nearly nauseous thinking about what it could be. Was it a plane flying way too close overhead? Was it an explosion? Had the dam that kept Keystone Lake from flooding the river behind my house and taking it with it crashed down? Would another tree fall and come crashing through my windows? Beckett, our 5-month-old, was downstairs asleep when everything started shaking last week, and I scooped her up and stepped outside, fearing the absolute worst, and instead found nothing really out of the ordinary. Back inside, I discovered on Facebook, much faster than the local news, that the trembling was, in fact, an earthquake whose focus was near Norman. I was relieved that it was over. Our house had not been crushed or swallowed up by Lake Keystone. A war had not begun. But the experience shook me up a little. It reminded me of just how fragile life really is. I think sometimes we need a little bit of that. To be shaken out of our comfort zones, to remember what is really important. I was reminded of how easy it is to forget that in just a single moment, our whole lives can be turned completely upside down. Lives, as we know it, can cease to exist, and our world can come tumbling down around us. That earthquake last week also reminded me of April 19th, 1995, a day that changed many Oklahomans' lives forever. I was actually running late on my way to work as a teacher, driving on Interstate 40, just passing downtown Oklahoma City around 9 a.m., when the highway trembled and then swooned beneath my car. Later, friends would tell me that the explosion had felt like a Mack truck running into the side of their home. Of course, I would come to find out that what I had felt was actually the explosion ignited by Timothy McVeigh, the explosion that destroyed the Murrah building and severely damaged a nearly 16-block radius of downtown Oklahoma City. That destruction also included the Y across the street from the Murrah building, where I had been earlier that morning working out. As that event unfolded, I felt very deeply that near miss of my own life and of many of my loved ones. And I grieved the loss of those whom I did not know personally, but who were connected to me through my students or through teachers and friends. For many people in Oklahoma, life was divided that day into before and after the tragedy. Maybe you have a few of those moments in your life where life is divided to before and after a certain tragedy. When everything felt solid just moments before and then crumbles around you. Have you had those moments in your life? You can at least nod and let me know that I'm not the only one. All right, thank you. I bet you know what moments I'm talking about. Moments when a loved one dies too soon. When a relationship can't be salvaged. When the money or time or treatment has run out. When the truth comes out and makes you question everything you ever believed in. Have you had those moments? How do we then, after moments like that, pick up the pieces and build something new? We are all subject to forces seen and unseen that shape and shake the very foundations upon which we stand, that crumble the pillars of our understanding to dust and shake us at our very core. For a long time, humankind believed that our earth was flat and made of solid rock. But we have come to find out that at the center of our earth lies the core of its strength. It is what gives the earth the ability to withstand all of the forces that are impacting it. Let me tell you what I mean. Charles Darwin wrote, "The world, the very emblem of all that is solid, moves beneath our feet like crust over fluid." If you've studied geology, you know what I mean. It's not obvious in our day-to-day lives that the ground beneath our feet is really in a constant state of flux. It's like it's hard to imagine that we're actually on a planet that's spinning so many thousands of miles an hour around in a circle. But in our day-to-day lives and from our single perspective, we are fooled into believing in solidity, believing in permanence. The truth is that the foundation of our earth and of our lives is not only moving, the foundation on which we stand is also covered with lots and lots of fault lines. Fault lines. Places where two forces have met and sometimes have buckled under the pressure. It's where texture is added to the surface of the land, where our lives are marked with hills and mountains and valleys, proof that our lives have not always been easy. Now, what if we read the earth's makeup and its landscape as another form of Scripture? After last week's earthquake, I began to wonder, where are my own fault lines? After last week's earthquake, I began to wonder how I might focus on the places in my own life where the pressure is building, where two opposing forces meet. Places in my life where I might benefit from spending a little bit of time mulling over the F word. Oh, you can giggle. Because it's not that word I'm talking about. But that word is actually pretty important for this, because I want to spend a minute with that word. That F word is relevant here, because if we're tempted to use that F word, especially followed by you or off, that is a pretty big sign pointing us to places in our lives where the pressure is building, where we might have some resistance and probably, I would suggest, a little bit of work to do. If you're using that F word in that way, then you probably need some of the F word that I really want to focus on this morning, which is forgiveness. You see, the good news is that the strength of the earth comes from its forgiveness. The strength of our planet, of God's creation, comes from its capacity to move with the tension, to move with the pressure, not clinging to the nearby plate, but sliding independently and in conjunction with it. Our strength comes from our forgiveness. Our resilience comes from our capacity to forgive. So where are the fault lines in your life? Places where the pressure is building and a shift is likely to occur. Where do you need forgiveness so that you can move with the tension? Someone once said, forgiveness is giving up the possibility of a better past. Think about that. The possibility of a better past, giving that up, that idea. Because the past, in fact, of course, cannot be changed. So forgiveness becomes about assessing the damage which you have caused or that has happened to you, and then picking up the pieces and going on with your life. Rebuilding with the resources that you have left, knowing exactly what you know now. The good news for us is that we're not the first group of people to have had to grapple with forgiveness. For thousands of years, people on this earth have had to deal with conflict and tragedy, and all the world's religions at some point grapple with the question and teach us that forgiveness is in fact the answer when our world has fallen apart, when relationships fall apart. It is forgiveness that loosens us up so that we can withstand all of the forces confronting us, so that we can salvage what we have left and move on.